You still stressed about buying our first house, sweetie? You still stressed about buying our first house, sweetie? You still stressed about buying our first house, sweetie?
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Friday evening. TGIF, guys. I tell you what, it is definitely, a weekend is definitely needed. It's been quite a week. That's why we're going to take it a little easy today and just have some fun segments. Again, we'll talk about important stuff, but we'll do it a little bit more fun, including, Donald Trump going after Michael Cohen on Twitter. That's fun. Don Jr. and Eric Trump making themselves look stupid. That's also fun. And then should we fire or should Jared Kushner be fired? That debate seems to be raging on Twitter. So we'll have a little bit of fun with that as well. And then Sebastian Gorka wants to save your hamburgers. That's awesome. And then, of course, Stuart Varney. We'll talk about him and the latest attacks against AOC. In fact, the hamburger story is also fun because it involves AOC. So I think we're going to have some fun with those segments. And then just to do something a little bit different, too, I'll be taking questions. So you guys, you normally ask me questions anyway. But I'm actually going to specifically take some questions today. This is a little fun Q&A. Ask whatever, and I will, of course, answer. So it should be fun. Just send them, and I'll read them like after or in between some stories and stuff. And we'll just try to ride out this Friday and into the weekend. So we leave off a little bit, happier. So kind of end the week on a little bit of a lighter note and a little bit of a fun audience sort of interaction note. So should be fun. So guys, yeah, send your questions on the chat here. And speaking of chat, we have a super chat from LL for the camera fund. Thank you, L. I appreciate it so much. We're gonna get an amazing camera thanks to you guys. So with all the help that you you and the other donors have been all the money that you guys have been giving us to help out with that, to get that camera. That is awesome. It's amazing. And we're going to have an amazing camera. So thank you so much. You guys are what make this show. And, I can't thank you enough for all the help that you have given me and that you continue to give me. So, all right. Now, speaking of help, one way to do it, Patreon. So what I'm going to do and what I've been doing is, for the patrons, I'm basically giving you guys a shout out and a big thank you for supporting the show. And I'm going to give a couple of those names now. I want to give a shout out, of course, to Eric Denton, Eric Venua, Eric Husso, Aaron Pimentel, Ethan Hattendorf, Ezzy Mumfrey, Farzad Missouri, and Felissa Lejour. Hopefully I said that right. So thank you to everybody who donated. I appreciate that. You guys are amazing, and you help, of course, support independent progressive media. You have kept me on the air, and you have kept us growing, and we have hit that 100,000 thanks to you. And again, without you guys, I would not be here. And I just huge thanks to you guys. And I appreciate you. And I got the best audience in the world. Oh, hey, we have another super chat from Winkle to Bernie, bro. Says, just helping out for the camera. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You're awesome. Oh, hey, here we go. We actually do have a question before we get started. And that is, do I have a degree in communications and journalism? I do not. So I was actually thinking about it. And interestingly enough, I asked Anna Kasparian. So now Anna's got a journalism degree. She is incredibly professional and she's very successful. So I asked her, is it worth it getting a journalism degree to go and do this kind of job? And she flat out told me no, which was a really surprising answer. But if you have been following some of her post games where, she's especially been going after CNN incredibly hard. In fact, she has a moratorium on using stories from CNN. She no longer considers them a reputable news source, right? Because of them hiring, hack Trump people as actual editors. So like managing editors are hack Trump people. Oh, wonderful, right? So she said, look, I don't think it's worth it. I think it's a lot of money. You're not going to get much out of that journalism degree. And so, look, I think that for one, that saves me a ton of money, and that's great. But for two, it actually does show you the sad state of journalism now. That people who don't have journalism degrees can often act and be more ethical and tell the truth more than people who have journalism degrees and giant media corporations. So it is really interesting. Okay. Now, how did I get started? Well, that's an interesting question, right? So how I got started with doing a YouTube show is I actually started doing like guest spots on a TYT launched fan channel, right? So this was like a fan show, whatever, where you would get people would come on and they would, talk about different issues. So I got involved doing that channel, putting my opinion. And by the way, I was super, super camera shy back in the day. So I was like, I don't know. I'm not really good at being in front of the camera. I'm not really good talking in front of the camera. Like, I think I kind of suck about, when it comes to this. So like, I don't know, but I'm going to try it anyway because I'm really interested because I had been watching TYT for quite some time beforehand. And so it got me really fired up and really passionate about politics and about policy. And it made me, read up on things and, get to know what's going on. And I had a real interest and still have a real interest in discussing important issues and discussing the news. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to try my hand. And gradually I just got more involved. I started up my own channel just to do, some segments with people that I had met doing that show. And we did our own thing. And then we were approached by the Young Turks themselves. Aaron Wasaki, he gets referenced from time to time. So Aaron reached out and said, hey, you want to take over one of these channels? And I said, absolutely. When do I start? So that's kind of how we started with this whole thing. It's an interesting story, but there's a story abridged. But yeah, that is an excellent question. And look, a lot of you people that have been here for a long time, you guys already know that story, but we have gotten a lot of new subscribers and a lot of new followers since the last time I told that story. So, thank you guys for asking. And this is for the new people. For the old people, thank you for being here for so long and supporting me getting to that point. So, all right. Anyway, I do have a college degree, but it's not in anything like specific. So it's a general technology degree. Interesting thing about me is I used to try to want to be a network administrator. So I work on my own computers. I work on my own equipment. So I know my way around the internal guts of a computer. I've taken apart laptops. So I'm a bit of a nerd. And so, that has actually helped me a lot in doing this because of setting up my own equipment. And so I know a lot of the hosts, for example, Kyle and Jank, are so computer and technology illiterate. It's kind of funny. I'm like the opposite. So I set everything up. I manage everything. And yes, you've seen that I've had a lot of technical issues throughout the entire time that I've been doing the show. And, it comes with the territory because you have so many different things that are working together, so many different systems and pieces of software, etc. But I've, found a way to make it work. And that's just part of doing things yourself and doing things, like without a budget. Because up until a while ago, I did not have a budget at all. And so I was using like a laptop that I used in college from 2012 up till like 2017. So that's kind of how we're at. where we've been at specifically, right? So, yeah. So one thing is, he has no idea. A lot of these people that don't play video games have no idea about video game culture, nerd culture, or anything like that. So I don't hold it against him too much. But when they do like a video game segment, I kind of cringe and I kind of roll my eyes, and it's just like, nah, dude, you have no idea. Like, you don't know. But what Jake knows about is politics, and he knows a ton more than I do on that, and I'm learning things every day. So he's been in it for like 20 years. So we all have our expertise. All right. So I love some of these questions, and thank you for sending those to me. All right. So while you guys come up with more questions, let's dive in. Let's do one of the first stories here, and we'll talk about Donald Trump's tweets against Michael Cohen. Okay. So President Trump started his day doing what he, normally does. Whines on Twitter about the Mueller investigation, but this time he went after Michael Cohen. Now, Michael Cohen, of course, earlier this week had done a committee hearing with the House Oversight Committee, and he dropped quite a few bombshells on the Trump organization and on Trump himself. Now, following that, the president is not too happy about this, and tweeted out an attack against Cohen early Friday, claiming that his testimony had been, quote, totally discredited by a Fox News report. Now think about that, right? So I think it was Hannity. It's either Hannity or Tucker Carlson, who did, probably both, did some news segments about how Cohen completely discredited himself, which is hilarious because he actually didn't. Cohen, interestingly enough, and I've said this before, Cohen is a snake. Cohen is a liar. He was caught lying to Congress before, right? The thing is that he was doing it on behalf of Donald Trump. And he was doing it on behalf of Donald Trump for Donald Trump in order to protect Donald Trump. So now he's got nothing to lose and really nothing to gain. And so at least at this point, he actually is being honest. And look, he presented quite a few things that could land the Trump organization in major, major trouble. Now, as I said before, the president's not happy about this, and he tweeted this out. I see. Now that the 2-year Russian collusion case has fallen apart, there was no collusion except by, and it's spelled by as in by, crooked Hillary and the Democrats. They say, gee, I have an idea. Let's look at Trump's finances and every deal he's ever done. Well, if you want to find money laundering or tax evasion, then you would generally want to look at somebody's finances. I'm just saying, yes, that's where you want to go. Now, as far as Russian collusion, I've talked about that before, right? And that is not the thing that was that would bring Donald Trump down. I've been saying that all along. That's why I've been always afraid of the Mueller investigation, and had become more and more skeptical of what it would actually find, as the investigation continued, because I think that it looked, and we don't know that for sure, but I think it was probably too limited in scope. So, meaning that we're not really going to find anything there, and it's going to be disappointing. The real crimes, of course, have to do with, again, money laundering and other financial crimes. And so you would have to look into the finances. Now, where does President Trump not want you to look? Into his finances, of course. Now, he continues in his tweets. He says, let's follow discredited Michael Cohen, which, by the way, not discredited, and the fraudulent and dishonest statements he made on Wednesday. Again, now, what's interesting is that there is no proof that anything that he said, for the most part, and I guess there's a couple parts that I would be like, I don't know about that, Michael. for example, when he said, the moment and Trump will get to this, the moment I turn against Trump is Charlottesville. No, 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 no. The moment you turn against Donald Trump was the moment you got caught by the FBI. When your office got raided. So let's be honest about that, right? But anyway, and Trump mentions this. He says, no way, it's time to stop this corrupt and illegally brought witch hunt. Time to start looking at the other side where real crimes are committed. Republicans have been abused long enough. And again, I think it was in another tweet, a different tweet. He talked about, like I said, the where Cohen had been. Well, okay, so they talked a lot of things about Cohen. For one, like some sort of book deal that Cohen is supposedly having, that he's been shopping around for to sell his manuscript or whatever, and then he had changed the manuscript, whatever. But at the end of the day, this is him saying, I'm a victim. I mean, Republicans, we have been abused enough. Really? Does anybody remember Benghazi? How about, does anybody remember the emails? Now, I talked about the emails, right? I think the emails were really important. Now, she got hammered on those emails. Hillary Clinton did. And look, rightly so. A lot of the stuff in the emails were important, right? And so, but that's all we talked about. Like, even mainstream media, that's all they talked about. Despite the fact that Donald Trump had some major issues as well. So, who's getting beat up more, right? What about Tan Suitgate? What about the Bill Clinton impeachment? No. You want to talk about who's been abused. And again, some rightly so, right? Republicans generally have not been abused. No, what they are is, again, they're a bunch of snowflakes and they're doing projection. They would go after the Democrats in some of the most vicious ways possible. And look, sometimes rightly so, but anytime anyone went after them for actual corruption, and I'm not saying that the Democrats haven't done corruption, of course they have, but in a lot of cases, the corruption, namely comes from the right. So let's be honest about that. We have seen a lot of cases of Republican corruption and Republican hypocrisy. And when you point that out, oh no, suddenly it's the Republicans that are the victims. Either the Democrats are super weak snowflakes, or they're super, super strong and they're abusers. I know where they're at. I know what the Democrats are. And the Democrats, I should say the Democratic Party, for the most part, with various notable exceptions, is sort of where the Republicans used to be. They are now sort of the party of big business and big corporations, while the Republican Party is basically insane at this point. So, and there we go. Now, anyway, I got one more great example of abuse, by the way. Birtherism. You guys remember that? Again, there's literally a conspiracy that the first black Democratic president was from Kenya and not actually an American. So, come on. You want to tell me Republicans are the victims here, that they're being abused and victimized. But that's the thing. It's projection. This is classic victimhood mentality. And it's funny, again, as I said, when progressives, I'm not saying the Democratic Party, but I'm saying progressives, right? When we stick up for marginalized communities and we try to get them help and we try to get them opportunity, we try to get them things like healthcare and good education, we're supporting victimhood, right? But when Republicans and corporate Democrats, they revel in their greed and their corruption and take money from giant donors and then, of course, launch the most heinous attacks against progressives, and we decide to call them out for it, they scream bloody murder. They say they're the victims, and then they call for civility. It's unreal. But this is what happens. This is the state of modern politics. There's an entire base of people on the right, especially, that can't wait to feel victimized. And I mean, people wonder, why there's a group that specifically supports Donald Trump 100% still, even after everything. And it's because they feel victimized too, or they want to feel victimized. And look, some of it is true. For example, the neoliberal establishment economics, right? So you want to talk about being a victim of that? Well, most of the country, people, everybody who's not rich is a victim of that neoliberal establishment economic system that is crushing workers into the ground. That's fair. But in other areas where they're actually not being victimized, Trump makes them feel like it's okay to feel like a victim. For example, when women get more rights, or they get rights over their own body that they didn't have before, men suddenly feel victimized. Come on, man. Not only that, but when it comes to right-wingers, their portrayal in the media, when it comes to things like Black Lives Matter and fighting against racism, suddenly you got a lot of people on the right that are feeling a little bit victimized. Which is, again, it's frustrating because, hey, you're not losing anything. When someone else gains something, you don't lose it. This is not a zero-sum game. Black people getting the right to not get shot in the street by police doesn't mean that you lose something. But again, it's insane. But Trump makes people feel like it's okay to be a victim, despite having some advantages. Now you might ask, as a white person, what kind of advantages do we have? I mean, we're not like starting off with like, nobody hands us a gold mansion or, you know, a brand new car when we're born. That's true. And so you might think, what advantages are we given? But when you realize that the advantage that we're given is the benefit of the doubt, right? That we're not considered to be criminal. Or, for example, there's a phenomenon where white people identify black people as looking older than they are. Like, for example, somebody like Tamir Rice, right? I think there were people that thought that he was, he was like 12? They thought he was like 16 to 18 years old. I mean, it's crazy stuff like that we don't have to deal with. That's our privilege, right? And so we have that privilege and people don't. And so we have those advantages. And look, pointing out that we have that advantage, for some reason, makes certain people feel like, oh no, you're coming after me. Now I'm the victim. And speaking of other advantages that a lot of people don't actually have, but Trump did, Trump inherited $400 million from his dad. And a successful business empire and a name that he could market. Most people don't get that. And yet Donald Trump claims to be a victim in almost everything, right? He had all these advantages and he screwed it up. He ran his businesses basically into the ground. He went bankrupt 6 times. And likely the reason that he doesn't want to release his tax returns is most likely, or I should say like one of the biggest reasons I think to him is that it might show that he's not as rich as he claims to be. So there's that. and look, through all of that, everything that he's done, which is, look, tax evasion, that's something that they're looking at when it comes to Trump, keeping as much money as possible, screwing his dad out of, or, you know, his fellow family members out of money in order to get an even larger amount of his dad's money. All that stuff he did, stiffing workers, he still considers himself a victim. And there are people who believe he's a victim. People like Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen used to believe that. And Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and all of these pro-Trump conservatives, they have all fallen for this narrative. And another thing is, of course, they feel victimized by progress and by, you know, the law, when people actually try to go and punish people who are wealthy and powerful. And so, look, they're used to flouting the law with impunity, right? Because for the longest time, they've had the money and they've been able to rig the system. So, and so Donald Trump, despite being named by, as a criminal, he is individual one, being named on that by some of the closest members of his inner circle, will sadly probably not face any sort of punishment. I don't see Republicans impeaching Donald Trump. I don't think they'll do the right thing. So there's this bet going on between Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks on whether or not Republicans will do the right thing. Anna says they will not, and I agree with her on that. I don't think Republicans will do the right thing. I think they're in their own cult mentality, their own victimhood complex, and so they will not do the right thing. They will continue to support Donald Trump no matter what, because to them, criminality is not a bug, it's a feature. So, and it's pretty terrible when you think about it, because you've got so many people who could potentially allow a criminal to continue being in the White House because it helps them retain power and money. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what motivates people around Trump and the politicians that support him. So, okay. Moving on here. Let's see if there are any more questions. Fake billionaire, fake president. Absolutely. Let's see. Okay. Let's move on. So Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump got into a little bit of trouble on Twitter after they had mocked a reporter for reporting on a very serious situation. Now, this reporter is roll call reporter Bridget Bowman, and she had shared an article by a colleague talking about how a police officer had left his gun in a bathroom at the Capitol Visitor Center complex. Now, this is a Glock 22, and it's, I guess, a standard police weapon. And she was worried because, well, in the story, apparently Glock 22s have a safety system that is not a usual kind of safety system, meaning that you could basically bypass the safety by pulling the trigger. Essentially, there is no safety. I'm not quite sure 100% how it works, but I believe I know more than Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, as evidenced by their tweets. Now, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted in response to the story, "Oh my God, a gun that fires if the trigger is pulled." Well, generally. But the problem is, again, with that safety and actually leaving that gun in a bathroom to where a kid could actually pick it up and use it, or somebody else could pick it up and use that gun. So that's problematic. And if you have police officers that are leaving their guns in bathrooms, guns that don't have a traditional safety that can be easily picked up by a regular person or by a child and accidentally used, that could be a huge, huge problem, right? So, now, Don Jr. Afterwards says, "I understand full well how a Glock works. I own a few, but this kind of sensationalism is why no one that actually understands guns can have a discussion with the other side. They don't have a clue, but want to make the rules." Well, but you don't have a clue, because you obviously just pointed out how you don't actually know about how it works, because you completely disregarded a story about somebody leaving that gun in the bathroom and having it possibly picked up by somebody else and used. You apparently don't know how it works, which is sad, right? Now, there's more. Eric Trump also added in, it fires if the trigger is pulled. Generally, that's how firearms work. Hashtag big scoop. Now, to show you how they have a little bit of self-awareness, later on, he deleted that tweet. But that's not before other users jumped in. Robert Manning says, you're so dumb if you think this was actually about the mechanics of a gun, rather than the fact that, say, if a child came upon the gun, not knowing how it works, accidentally setting it off. You just say the dumbest stuff. No wonder Daddy didn't trust your judgment. These guys are both in charge of the Trump business. Really. No wonder. It is a wonder that the business has not fallen apart. Ethan Embry says, what the article is highlighting, this gun effectively has no safety. Its only safety is embedded into the trigger. As the trigger is pulled, the safety is released. Typically, this type of safety means the gun is always ready to fire, if chambered, and cops typically chamber their guns. Now, I remember taking an introductory law enforcement course at a community college. So the way that they do things is if a policeman draws their gun, it is ready to fire. And you do not stop firing until that magazine is empty. Now, that is one of the issues that obviously police have right now, is that they are too quick to pull their guns and use lethal force. We've seen it 1,000 times. And so having this type of weapon with this kind of safety in the hands of police, look, it makes sense for what they're trying to do, what they're going for. I don't agree with that. And I think, we should have cops that are less trigger happy. But what I'm saying is that at least that setup makes sense to what they're trying to do, right? And how it mechanically works. But again, this is something that Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump do not understand, right? Ian Poley says, we get it, Junior. You know how to shoot things. Shouldn't you be getting your affairs in order before the indictments start dropping? Hey, we'll see if he'll get indicted, right? Now, more. Packer Pam says, again, you missed a point. You pulled the trigger on sensationalism. Fun. D'Angelo says, I think you missed a point. I'm not sure you know. I'm sure you do know the safety in the Glock is in the trigger. Not like other weapons that has a different safety mechanism. Minty Claire says, don't be an ignoramus. You knew it was a reference to a gun that doesn't require cocking. Every chance you get, you take in pursuit of unique posturing. You and your family are laughing stocks around the world. Great branding. Should be terrific for future licensing deals. Angular Ed said, she means it has no safety, Dillweed. So here's the thing, right? So they're rightly getting mocked for not understanding the context of the story. Which, again, if you actually read it and you don't just retweet headlines, then you'll understand that, hey, look, having police have this type of weapon and leaving it in a visitor center is a very dangerous thing. So maybe we should look at maybe supplying them with different weapons, or, I don't know, doing something different. Anything different that would prevent a situation where somebody who, doesn't understand how this works, or a child doesn't get a hold of this weapon and accidentally kill themselves or someone else. There's more. Laura Marie says, if you would have taken 2 seconds to read the article, it says, unlike a gun with a traditional safety, a Glock will fire with the trigger is pulled, making the discovery of an unattended gun in the Capitol complex particularly concerning. That's a quote from the article. So that's enough of them explaining, right? Now there's more. Jen says, Eric, cling to your tenuous spot as the smart one. Stop talking. Now, wait a minute. I thought Eric was the dumb one. The dumber one. Now, we're going to have to get back to who's the dumber person. Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr.? Who's the dumber Trump child? I'm kind of curious now what you guys think. I may have to do a poll. Mike Wade says, Eric, you was smart. Simon Marshall says, poor dumber Fredo. He does his best. Lisa Rago says, I see why you don't say much. Let's keep it that way. And Mitchell Robertson says, unlike Eric, who is triggered if his dad is fired. That's an interesting one. And then Zaza Chilver says, are you competing with Junior now? I think it is a competition. And again, I don't know who's going to win. But we need to have the dumb off. Who will win? And why can't it be both? That's a good question. It can be, but again, I want to see who's the dumber person. And so let me know in the comments who you think is dumber, Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take a quick break here. We'll come back. I actually want to go to the Sebastian Gorka story because that's fun. We're going to have hamburgers. We'll talk about that and AOC and the Green New Deal. So stay right here. Please like and share. Send your questions or super chats, whatever. And then I'll be back and we'll go over those. All right. We'll be back in a second. Around the Nation. Everybody, welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so reading your question here. Have I chosen a camera yet? Not quite. So I'm still trying to figure out my options. I know I've gotten a lot of really, really good suggestions. And so I want to go through and I want to figure out just exactly what what I want, what kind I'm going to use, etc. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? And again, I'm always open to taking suggestions, but I'm actually not going to choose a camera until, well, I guess until the fundraiser is completely over, for one. And not only that, but I'm going to take my time, make sure to choose it right, because it is really expensive. So I want to make sure. But okay. Anyway, so any more questions here from the chat? All right. I'm looking here, and let's see. Have I chosen any camera? I already have. Okay. So, well, let's go to the Sebastian Gorka story then. There we go. Actually, no, that's not right. Okay. All right. Now this week, CPAC is going on. That's the Conservative Political Action Committee. I don't know. I don't think that's actually correct. No. Let's start that again. I'm thinking of something completely different. Hold on. So right now, CPAC is going on, and it's full of your typical amount of crazy. Though, of course, this time one of the themes of that crazy is attacking AOC. AOC happens to be a big target of attacks during this conference. And not only that, but they're also using the Green New Deal. So, since the proposal was revealed that would boost the share of American power generated from alternative energy sources as close to as 100% as possible over the next decade, which is a very ambitious plan, but something that we need to do to head off some of the worst of climate change, conservatives have attacked it as a way to take away everything you own. Now, I'm not kidding. They're actually saying this is the liberal plot to take away your stuff. Well, there's no evidence of that, but we'll go on to hear exactly what he thinks in this next video. In fact, here's what he says.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has introduced the Green New Deal, which is, remember this one, use it, it's a watermelon. Green on the outside, deep red communist on the inside. They want to take your pickup truck. They want to rebuild your home. They want to take away your hamburgers. This is what Stalin dreamt about but never achieved. You are on the front lines of the war against communism coming back to America under the guise of democratic socialism, which is just a PC term for communism.
Wow, man. Did I just go back to 1980? I swear that's what you would expect from all the politicians back during the Red Scare. Again, oh, it's a watermelon, green on the outside, but deep communist red in the inside. Well, then what are the seeds? You know what? I'm curious now. What would they call the seeds? Seeds of communism? I don't know. Anyway, that's nonsensical. But anyway, it's a weird question for me to ask. But anyway, let's get to the substance here, if there is any. They want to take away your pickup truck. They want to rebuild your home. They want to take away your hamburgers. They want to take away your pick. Do they? Really? There's nothing in that proposal which says we're going to ban your truck. We're going to take away your hamburgers. What? All in the name of democratic socialism, which is actually just no different than communism. Actually, no, if you, I'm sure you probably already knows this, but all you have to do is kind of open up a dictionary or do some sort of cursory search between the two terms, and you would realize that they're completely 100% different. Democratic socialism actually exists inside of a capitalist structure. I don't know if you know that. Communism completely changes that structure away from capitalism. But again, you would have to know that. Well, you would actually have to be intellectually curious enough to find that out and actually know that. And look, social democracy also exists inside of capitalist structure. And so I'm more of a social democrat. So I believe in things like, Medicare for all and free college and a living wage. All that exists inside of a capitalist structure. Look at, for example, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and all those other Nordic countries. That is the Nordic style of mixed market systems is, I think, excellent. It's a model for the rest of the world, right? Now, it's not socialism, but it's capitalism with heavily socialistic elements inside of it. And these elements actually increase the health, well-being, happiness, and education level of their citizenry. And if it works there, and they do it cheaper, by the way, they do healthcare cheaper, then we could definitely do it here. But no, according to Seb Gorka, that's communism. The guy knows nothing. He knows absolutely nothing. His ignorance would be stunning if I didn't already know that he is just using this to his advantage in order to keep his taxes low. That's what this is about. Now, what's also funny, let's get to the hamburgers, because that's the fun part, right? Oh, they want to take your hamburgers. You realize, and he made this, Stalin really wanted to do this, right? Stalin wanted to take your hamburgers. Actually, to be honest, Stalin had launched the mass production of meat patties in Russia. He actually, he sent somebody to America and was like, America had a good idea. Make more meat patty. So I'm going to make meat patties mass produced. So those meat patties, your hamburgers, are communist hamburgers. You're eating commune burgers, or commune burgers, or communist burgers. Oh, you know what? That's why they're hamburgers. They're different than hamburgers, which are communists, a communist plot by Stalin, but hamburgers are American. See? There we go. Okay. Now, as far as the other claim, of course, rebuilding your home. No, part of the Green New Deal is trying to modernize old buildings to be more energy efficient. Now, energy efficiency means saving money in the long run by saving energy. Oh, well, who would be against saving money? I mean, yes, it takes an investment of taxpayer money, obviously, to make these older buildings more energy efficient. But at the same time, on the long run, taxpayers save more money when they're using less energy. Well, that's good, right? Who would be against that? People like Seb Gorka, who want to pay more to own the libs. That's what that's about. So, look, as far as, let's go back to the trucks point again. Now, the reason that they come to this conclusion that they're going to take the cars and the trucks or whatever is, again, we're trying to make electric cars, right? Well, electric cars obviously run cleaner, and they actually run a lot cleaner if they're hooked up to a grid that is 100% renewable energy, right? And so, yes, making those available doing electric cars, but also making public transportation, right? Now, public transportation is not something that is really caught on in America, but it's caught in a lot of other places, right? That's why other countries' public transportation systems are way, way better than ours. Ours are old, ours are slow, inefficient, and that's why, of course, a lot of Americans use their own passenger vehicles, which adds a lot of carbon to the atmosphere. I realize that, right? So now, the whole plan of the Green New Deal is to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have like things like high-speed rail. For example, we're going to build high-speed rail. That's going to get you to places that you want to go faster than doing it in a car and doing it in a cleaner way. So if you want to go cross-country, for example, you don't have to get onto an airplane. Yes, airplanes will still exist. They're not actually eliminating airplanes. They're saying, here's an option if you want to get there faster than a jet, and it's high-speed rail. So conservatives, of course, look at that as saying, you're getting rid of my planes, you're getting rid of my cars. That's not true. We're actually wanting to make a system that is more efficient, faster, that will make people want to choose those public transportation systems better. And look, who doesn't want to save time and money? Well, people like Sebastian Gorka, who again want to waste time, waste money in order to own the libs. And that's what this comes down to. Now, AOC, of course, saw this. She fought back, and she said, quote, "We're not going to force anybody to go vegan or anything crazy like that, but we got to address factory farming." And I think that's really smart, because one of the big problems with factory farming, other than, of course, the cruelty part, which a lot of Republicans don't actually care about, like, oh, no, go ahead and be cruel as you want. But one of the bigger health issues is the conditions, right? So, I mean, look, if you've seen videos where they've done factory farming or these factory farms, you'll see that the animals are in incredibly cramped, dirty conditions. Disease is rampant. And they have, filled these animals with antibiotics. In fact, most antibiotic use goes to these animals, which is a big problem because antibiotic resistance is on the rise. So if you do something about factory farming and you eliminate that, then you not only reduce the usage of antibiotics and therefore actually prevent some of this antibiotic resistance, right? And also make the food safer that we eat and cleaner, then that's ultimately better for everybody, except for, I guess, the people that are making tons and tons of money on running these horrible factory farms, right? So that's one thing, right? Now, she also adds in, quote, "Maybe we shouldn't be eating a hamburger for breakfast, lunch, and dinner." Well, you stay away from my hamburgers, AOC. No, I'm kidding, of course. Generally they tell you not to eat as much red meat. And so that's generally a health thing, but that's not the government forcing you not to eat red meat. So now, of course, social media, and I love sharing social media because it's a lot of fun. They decided to jump in here and go after Sebastian Gorka's speech. And we'll start with Maria Chung, right? Seb Gorka is the William Wallace of hamburgers. "You will not take our hamburgers. You will not take our trucks. And you will not take our freedom." Anyway, Parker Malloy says, "I put Gorka's CPAC rant about Democrats' non-existent plan to steal your hamburgers over an old McDonald's hamburger commercial. You're welcome." That's fun. Tom Gara says, "Gorka is confusing Stalin with the Hamburglar." Aaron Rupar says, "Former Trump White House official Sebastian Gorka, they want to take away your hamburgers. This is what Stalin dreamt about, but never achieved." But in reality, as I mentioned before, Stalin actually mass-produced hamburgers. Oops. Okay. Then, Malcolm Nance says, "Gorka's greatest fear, missing lunch." Hashtag Meal Team 6. That's great. And then one more here. And this is probably the best. It's my favorite. Ryan Brennan says, any ideas if hamburgers will remain available? This is why I love social media, man. These Republicans, these are crazy, crazy people. I mean, again, if you want to have legitimate criticisms of the Green New Deal, saying maybe how can we implement such a wide sweeping piece of legislation, and how will we be able to look? I know you guys are probably going to get mad at me for asking, well, how are we going to pay for it? Well, we know how we're going to pay for it. But if you're concerned about the economics of the issue, I guess that's a sort of legitimate question, more legitimate than screaming, they're going to take our burgers. So, obviously, these Republicans, look, they look at the polls, which, by the way, have a majority of the American people, 80% of people in support of a Green New Deal. They look at that and they're scared. Why? Because in the end, it means that rich people are probably going to have to pay a little bit more in taxes. And so that's something that they cannot stand. Okay. Moving on. One more. Oh, you know what? Actually, I don't have time for that. We'll do that another time. The Stuart Varney story. That's it. Fun stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Please like and share if you haven't already. Thank you guys for the questions and the suggestions and the camera. So thank you all for that. Appreciate it. We'll be back on Monday for another fantastic show. So please tune into that. Coming up next is TYT. So tune into that, or of course Status Quo, whatever you prefer. Thank you guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you guys on Monday. Have a fantastic weekend.